Hello. So this video is going to be for those that tune into it right now today, May 10th, 11th, whatever day it is today, 2025. But this is also a timeless message. This is a message that somebody could check out 6 months, a year, 10 years, 20 years down the road, okay? The reason why is because this message is about generational curses. And that's a timeless thing. People have been breaking generational curses since the caveman days, right? I've talked a little bit about this already on my channel in the past, but the Lord's just having me give another word on it that pertains to the current energy at this time. And I'm just going to put it in more basic terms because some of the past words on this topic have been a little lengthy, right? So basically, I was doing the dishes and the Lord was telling me that there's righteous ones today, chosen ones such as myself, who will come across this word, in some time today or sometime in May, or will come across it a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? But for those of us right now today that this is a present word for us, the Lord is saying that for you and also for the wicked. So this message is for the righteous, chosen ones, and the wicked ones. So those that have came against you, chosen one, okay? Because like I say, there's duality, and I get both sides visit my channel. The wicked visit my channel, and so do the righteous, okay? So at this present time right now, as things are kind of wrapping up, and I don't want to say I can't weigh in if they're permanently wrapping up, that's it, it's done, or if this is just a temporary wrap up for this shift and phase that we've went through, right? But I told you all that the spring season, which we're in the middle of right now, was going to be about becoming a butterfly, right? I put that word out a couple months ago. You're a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And that there was going to be a lot of blossoming and things like that happened in the spring. And I put those messages out in the winter. Now that we're right in the middle of spring, there's a lot of breakthroughs happening that were prophesied. There's a lot of shifts that have taken place. There was a lot of planetary alignments and different things that were going on between basically heaven and hell in February, March, April, right? Which was all necessary to lead us to this junction that we're at here in May, okay? The Lord is saying that at this time today, there's righteous ones that aren't as evolved yet, that are wondering why they had to go through some of the things that they went through. And I'm not going to say, chosen one, that your cycle was 7 years, but I'm going to go with that as a time frame. So it could have been 10 years, could have been 5, could have been 3. But I mentioned in my word I put out the other day that the Lord kept showing me the number 7, okay? So in particular, in these last 7 years, give or take, maybe more or less, okay, but approximately the mean number being 7, you've went through a variety of different things. Majority of it being hardships, negative, things like this, right? Struggles, particularly since 2020, right? So out of those, could be however many years, but out of 7 years, particularly these last 5 since 2020, has been difficult for you, chosen one. And now that you either have experienced a shift, or are experiencing a shift, or will experience a shift. So either your shift happened 2 weeks ago, or it's happening today, or it's happening 2 weeks from now. But either way, you're around this same time frame, right? And you're wondering why you had to go through some of the things you did. You have some clarity now, right? Because the Lord, when things start to come to completion and finality on this chapter, you receive answers, right? You receive clarity and understanding of certain things from the past. Hindsight's 2020, as they say, right? So once you've made it through something, you look back at the past and you're like, you can see it crystal clear now, right? After the fact. So the Lord is saying that understanding and clarity is what's going on with chosen ones at this time. And while that's a welcome blessing, that the chosen ones are wondering, okay, God, thank you for bringing me through it. I understand why I went through it. I understand this. I understand that. Thank you for clarity on this. Thank you for clarity on that. But why did I have to go through this though? Okay. And the answer is generational curses. Plain and simple. But you're breaking generational curses. And so now I'm going to talk about myself for a second to make it, more relatable. So I've talked about this before, but every family's different. And you may have seen other chosen ones along your road, your journey, right? Chosen one, that it seemed like their wilderness season or their cursed chapters went by easier or quicker or seemed lighter than perhaps yours. Perhaps it felt like you were carrying a heavier weight for longer than others, right? Now, everybody's carrying a different weight. I've talked about this in past words about our spiritual heavyweight in our backpack, right? So on each of our backs, those of us that are chosen on this same timeline journey, we could have 5-pound weights in our backpack. We could have 100-pound weights in our backpack. We could have 50-pound weights in our backpack. We could have 10, we could have 20, 30, etc. Okay? Everybody's weight is different. And the duration of time that they are allotted to have to make it through certain things is different as well. Some people it could be weeks, some people it could be months, some people it could be years, some people it could be decades. Personally, I've seen people through this journey, chosen ones, talking that they've been going through cycles for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, carrying, things in hardship after hardship, difficulty after difficulty. But I've heard testimonies of other ones say that they found the Lord in 2022. By 2023, they had a house, a husband, big business, everything just turned around for them, went from hardship, struggle to bountiful in a year or less, right? But then I've heard others that are struggling through things for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, okay? And it seems like some people have to work through 4 or 5 things for 2 years, and then someone else works through 2 or 3 things over 6 months, and then someone else has to work through 10 or 20 things over the course of 20, 30 years, right? And the reason why that is, I'm here to bring you an answer for those of you that this message resonates for. It's your generational curses. And so I've talked about this before about spiritual debt, right? But the most common analogy that the Lord gives me to talk about spiritual debt is in monetary, is using it as a symbolic of monetary debt, okay? Because it makes the most sense. So picture that, say my ancestors, say my grandparents or my parents, say they pass away owing $10,000 in loans and credit cards and debts, just say, or on their mortgage or something. I would only have to come up with my brother to figure a way to pay $10,000 back, right? To get out from under that, right? But then my next door neighbor could go through the exact same scenario and perhaps they have to pay back $100,000 in debt. Or the neighbor on the other side of me only has to pay back $2,000 debt, and the neighbor behind that one has to pay $2 million worth of debt. You understand? So we understand that when it comes to monetary debt, your debt is different than mine. I might only owe $3,000 in debt. You might owe $30,000 in debt. Then our neighbor owes $10,000 in debt, and then our other neighbor owes $100,000 in debt. You know what I'm saying? The same idea or ideology applies to spiritual debt. And same with going back to the monetary debt. Sometimes we can pay that debt off really fast. We come into some money, right? We come into a settlement, we win a lottery, and we can pay that debt that was going to take us 10 years. We can pay it off in 6 months. Or sometimes we think, oh, I'll pay that debt off in 6 months. I'm getting this settlement. And then something happens, another thing happens. And now the debt that was supposed to take 6 months takes 10 years to pay off, right? So we understand this when it comes to worldly things, right? And so when somebody wins some money and they pay off their debt easy and quick, we call them lucky, we call them fortunate, right? But vice versa, if somebody has, a smaller debt to pay and they can manage it, but then they lose their job or something happens, a divorce or something, and now all of a sudden it's going to take twice as long and the debt has accrued to where now they owe twice as much. Now we're like, oh no, that's so unfortunate, right? And we label these people as blessed and cursed. And in a way that's accurate, but in a way it's not, because I am technically not responsible for the debt that my ancestors accrued, right? And you are technically not responsible either. You got to remember, the world that we lived in 100, 200, 300 years ago was different than it is today, right? Today, you steal a pack of gum at the store and you could possibly be facing fines and possible jail time, you know what I mean? Like, who knows, right? A criminal record, things like this. We have a lot of laws and rules in place today. But even 50, 100, 200 years ago, when we had great-great-great-grandparents, people were able to get away with a lot, and murder and things like this, and not, necessarily get caught or, whatever. Some people did get, so the Lord has told me this. I mentioned this in the Salem witch trials the other day too, in my message about that. The Lord said that 100 years ago, 200 years ago, there was innocent people that got viewed as guilty and guilty people that got viewed as innocent. So it was harder because today we have DNA and witnesses and cameras and video footage and things like this, fingerprint analysis, etc., right? So it's harder today to get out of a crime or to pin it on somebody else or to throw rocks and hide your hands. But back in the day when we had great-great-grandparents and uncles and aunts, they were able to do that. They were able to be the bad guy looking like the good guy and frame a good person and make them look bad. And don't get me wrong, the Jezebel spirit is ancient. The Jezebel spirit is still trying to do this today. Spiritually, is make the good look bad and the bad look good. But I'm just simply talking about the correlation between monetary things that we understand in this physical 3D world, right? But this is also from the moment we're born to the moment we pass, we are being put under a debt. So even a 1-week-old baby has debt on its head, okay? Now, obviously, that 1-week-old baby doesn't have financial debt on its head, but there's spiritual debt on its head. Because the ancestors in the past didn't clear that debt with the Lord. They didn't come clean about what they did. They didn't repent. They didn't get close to the Lord, whatever it may be. So therefore, what they did or were guilty of, no different than financial debt, was immediately inherited by the next of kin. So it's just like if something happens to my parents, I'm going to inherit their debt, right? I'm going to inherit their debt physically, and I'm going to inherit it spiritually, okay? And my grandparents and et cetera, et cetera. So it is up to each of us when we're born, if we have the understanding or learn the understanding of monetary debt and how to avoid, being guilty of crimes, physical ones and spiritual ones, and to avoid being under the umbrella of a monetary debt, we have to apply the same laws of notion to spiritual debt as well. So we have to keep our hands clean spiritually, not just physically, but spiritually, okay? And when we're guilty of something, if we mess up and we're guilty of something physically and or spiritually, we have to own up to that. We can't put that blame on somebody else, okay? So everything that we do from the minute we're born is being watched over, oversaw, and documented, okay? It's being monitored. And we are the placeholder of that spiritual debt, right? So with that said, one of the reasons, there's other reasons too, but getting in this one specifically, one of the reasons why you went through certain difficulties and hardships, chosen one, is because you were the one chosen to change these things for your bloodline, for your generation, because they hadn't been changed before you. And if you didn't make the choice, the free will choice to change the stuff, it would have continued to run through your bloodline to your children, your children's children, your children's children, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. There's people on the planet today that are aware of this, but they don't care. They're selfish. They're selfish and they're greedy. So they don't care that they're racking up spiritual debt or karma, so to speak, for their children, their children's children, because they're only focused on themselves and gratifying themselves in this lifetime, okay? No different than say you have responsible grandparents that watch their spending, and when they pass, they have minimal debt. The family can easily pay that off, right? No troubles. Versus some parents who are frivolous and rack up a whole bunch of debt because they're reckless and, immature and undisciplined. And now the family has to struggle to try to pay that off. It's the same analogy, is that there's also spiritually reckless people that will do things in their lifetime today that they're alive on, that they either are aware or unaware. If they're aware, it's actually worse for them, that they are putting upon their next generations. So whether you're unaware or aware, it's irrelevant. You're still held to it. No different than, say I'm speeding and I get a speeding ticket. I can say, oh, I was unaware of the speed. I didn't know the limit changed. That's fine, but there's still a very high like I'm still guilty of speeding, whether I was ignorant to the speed limit sign or not, right? Same thing goes. I can say I was unaware of the interest rate on the debt on that loan I took out, but it doesn't matter. I'm still owing on that loan, whether I was ignorant to the interest rate or not, right? The same rules apply to spiritual debt, is that just pleading the fifth or saying, oh, I didn't know that was that, or, I'm ignorant to this, that doesn't matter. The debt is still passed down, okay? Now, if you're aware that you're passing the spiritual debt, that's even worse, because obviously if you're aware you're doing it out of greed, selfishness, and malevolence, right? And complete recklessness. So the Lord will judge that accordingly. But either way, scenario A or B, this spiritual debt is going to be put down on the next of kin. Now, some people don't care enough about their children or their grandchildren or great-grandchildren or their family line or their bloodline to stop the debt, and even if they do, they don't want to go through the rigmarole and the struggle of trying to pay off that spiritual debt. Because you may ask, well, how do you pay off spiritual debt? You pay off spiritual debt by going through things, right? So say my ancestors, right? Say my ancestors accumulated $1 million in spiritual debt, because again, I'm using that as an analogy. My grandparents should have paid that off. Maybe they didn't pay off any, maybe they paid off a little, but say $750,000 still got passed down to my parents, right? So my grandparents only had to pay off $250,000. My parents say they only pay off $750,000, say $100,000 of it. Now there's $650,000 passed down. I'm next in line. I can pass the buck and even add more to it. I could throw another $250,000 on that debt recklessly if I want to. And whether I know it or not, aware of it or not, consciously or not, it's going to get passed on to my children. Now my children are having to pay back $650,000, $700,000 worth of debt. Spiritually, of course, right? If they don't clear that, then it falls to their children, etc., etc. So somebody has to rise up and take the courage, have the courage and the strength to sacrifice, right? This is what I talk about all the time on my channel. You have to bite the bullet, okay? It's no different than like I said, going back to the money example, say parents pass away, grandparents pass away, and whether it's known or unknown, the remaining family members discover that those parents or grandparents owed $200,000 to the bank. Well, now they can try to get out of it. They can try to flee the country, try to hide out, live on cash money, things like this, whatever it may be, to not have to pay back this debt. But if they're successful in that and they pass away, not only are they going to be judged for that by the Lord, because that's not right, you have to pay the debt, but that debt isn't just going to miraculously go away. It's going to get put onto the next ones, right? The next of kin. You understand what I'm saying? The same thing happens spiritually, except for the Lord is less forgiving with spiritual debt than our worldly system is with monetary debt. With monetary debt, we have loans, we have things like this. You can take out a loan to pay off a loan, you know what I mean? And get a better interest rate and get a financial advisor and things like this. There's little nuances, right? But the Lord doesn't work that way. He just basically sees it as black and white, is that there's spiritual debt and it has to be paid. So the way you'd pay off financial debt is through money, right? Either you don't make much money, so you pay it off little at a time as best you can, or all of a sudden you come into a windfall of money and you pay it all off outright and then you're out from under it and then you're scot-free, right? The same thing can happen spiritually, is that you can pay off this spiritual debt a little at a time. Okay, hallelujah. The Lord is saying that if he sees you doing what your ancestors should have, and picking up the buck and taking the horse by the reins and trying to take your hit spiritually and pay back this debt, the Lord will knock some of it off. He will knock some of the debt. So the Lord will work with you on your spiritual debt, like how the world system works with you on your money, on your financial debt, right? But he has to see that, for one, you're not adding to the debt anymore. The buck stops with you, right? And number two, that you're actually putting in the toil and effort to pay this debt off. No different than how if the debt collectors see that you're paying off some of it, they'll give you a settlement, right? You only have to pay back half or something like that, right? or they'll give you more time to pay it or something, because they're seeing that you're doing it on good faith. The Lord works the same way, is that if he sees you making the choice to, so what this can look like is, say your parents and grandparents, say your parents were raised in an alcoholic home. Say your grandparents were drinkers, and because of that, they never got close to the Lord. They were abusive. They, didn't take care of the kids, whatever. They were just focused on gratifying themselves. They pass away. They don't get right with the Lord. That debt that they accumulated, who knows? The Lord could value it. The price tag could be $10,000, $20,000, $150,000, $1 million, whatever. It depends on what someone's done in their lifetime and the debt that was accrued from the ancestors before, like those grandparents' parents, okay? Now the parents are the ones that have this. This is why they say, I'm a cycle breaker. My great-grandparents drank, my grandparents drank, my parents drank, I'm not going to drink. You can drink if you want. You have a free will choice to drink, and you can make the excuse and go, well, my parents drank, my grandparents drank, my great-grandparents drank, that's in my family, that's just the way it's going to go for me. But if you follow in those same footsteps and you pass away and you have children, it's going on to them, you see? Okay? Now those children have to be put in the same position like you were 20 years from now when they're grown up, if they're going to drink like they saw you all do, or if they're going to make a better choice. So when somebody stands and says, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to raise my kids that way. If I don't drink, I won't be abusive. If I'm not abusive, I won't neglect my kids, and my kids could have a better chance. I want my kids to go to college, things that no one's done in our family before. I want my kids to have healthy, happy marriages, something that's never happened in my family before. You see what I'm saying? The fact that you're choosing you can take the left choice or the right choice, and you're choosing the right choice to have it stop with you, the Lord is going to look on you favorably for making that choice and decision, and he will lighten some of that load for you and have it so that you can pay it off quicker, because he understands that it's not 100% your fault that you are how you are, or you're the way you are, because it was passed on debt from your ancestors that they should have, could have, would have cleared, and they chose not to. Okay. So the Lord took that up with them when they passed, and now you're in a same deciding position that they were once upon a time in. Are you going to sink or swim? Which one are you going to do? Are you going to walk the right path or take the left path like all those before you? Because the Lord knows that it's easier to take the left path and to just not take accountability and make excuses, right? But if you do that, then in the Lord's eyes, you're guilty of the same infractions that those before you were guilty of. And so now the Lord isn't going to lessen that debt. He's not going to give grace and favor to it. And it's going to tack on even more. And don't get me wrong, this happens. There are selfish, greedy, self-righteous people that, again, knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, choose to not clear this debt from their past bloodlines, from the past generations, and if anything, add on to it, okay? When this happens, if you make that choice, when you go, you're going to receive, okay, hallelujah, the Lord is saying a double portion. So you're going to receive a double judgment, okay? So I don't know what the Lord does with us after we go, but he's just telling me that if you choose the wrong choice, you're receiving a double portion, and it's in obviously a negative way. Because he's saying he's going to judge you for the things that you did bad, but also the fact that you passed it on knowingly to your next of kin. Okay, so you're going to get judged once and twice for that, all right? However, if you make the choice to clear the debt, it looks like you having to go through the struggles and hardships and basically the spiritual whippings and whoopings that your ancestors passed the buck off onto you. But if you choose that path, you will be blessed throughout it, and the Lord will grace you with grace and mercy, and he'll lessen the debt, and he will bless you throughout it, and also be judging you favorably when your time before him comes, okay? And so I hope that's making sense, right? So it's just like you're better off to, in this world, in the worldly way, to pay off your financial debt than to not pay off your financial debt, right? There's more consequence if you don't versus if you do. And a lot of times you don't even have to pay the whole thing off. they'll cut some of it off or give you more grace time and things like this, right? There'll be little mercies along the way. The Lord works the same way spiritually. So, long-winded answer to your question, chosen one, why did you have to go through some of these things to the degree that you had to? It's probably because your family had more spiritual debt on its head than, say, your neighbors or your friends or other people's, other chosen ones, etc., debt that they had on their family had on their heads. Okay, so it's not that this person's better than you, or you're better than someone, or they're worse than you, or you're worse than them, or any of this. It simply comes down to, like, for instance, I could have like $3,000 debt, but my neighbor goes and buys a brand new house, a brand new truck, and a brand new boat. Well, now all of a sudden they have $200,000 debt. And if they're going to be blessed to be on the earth for the next 50 years, well, they could probably pay that off in time, right? But every night they have to go to bed knowing they owe this debt. And that can cause stress to them and things like that, which can cause them to act out in other ways. Maybe they end up getting in over their head and they end up stealing to try to pay off this debt. And then what? You know what I'm saying? Now, heaven forbid, say they pass away 2 months later. Well, who's going to cover all that debt that they accrued and accumulated? You see what I'm saying? So this is the thing, is that I'm not better or worse than that neighbor beside me because they have more debt than me or I have less debt, right? And vice versa. They're not better or worse than me. I'm not better or worse than them. But the point is it's not about that. It's just that we have different debt. I only owe, my name owes 3,000, their name owes 200,000, right? They might have more flashy stuff than me, but I don't have to go to bed every night knowing that I owe $200,000, out there, right? So the same rules apply, is that it comes down to us owing different spiritual debts, where, like I said, perhaps my ancestors, due to their choices, owed $1 million in spiritual debt. That's a huge amount. It's up to me. It was up to my parents to pay that off. Maybe they weren't able to. So now it's up to me as the chosen one. That's what I'm chosen for, amongst other reasons, but I'm honing in on this one on this video. I can choose to pay that off or not. And if I choose not to pay it, that's my choice. I can even add to it if I want. But best believe it's going to come down onto my children or my grandkids, and I don't want that. So I chose, as overwhelming and as difficult and huge of an undertaking it was, I chose to be that one and to rise up in strength and courage and say, come hell or high water, I'm paying off this spiritual debt. And the Lord said, good, Amanda, perfect. But just so you know, it's a large debt. Your ancestors did A, B, C, D, E. So you're going to have to go through this and 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 this just to get somewhat out from under it. And you technically could go through 20, 30 more things, okay? But I'm going to give you the grace to not, to lessen the time. Instead of you having to pay off debt spiritually for 20, 30 years of your life, you only have to pay it off for 10. But it's going to be condensed, where during those 10 years, it's going to be blow after blow after blow after blow. No different than if you're paying off a financial debt. If you want to pay it off quick and fast, you're going to have to cut corners. You're going to have to struggle. You're going to have to eat ramen every night just to be able to put 80% of your paycheck towards that debt, right? No fun nights for a while, no extras, bland Christmases for a few years until you get out from under that debt. Or don't do it and just have a free-for-all, but then what, right? What's the consequence? So I hope this is making sense. The Lord asked me to put this word out, so this must be for somebody today. So for you, chosen one, righteous one, that's went through hardship after hardship, blow after blow after blow, in particular over the course of these last 5 to 7 years, again, could be more or less, but the Lord is highlighting that timeline. And you've asked the Lord, He's given you clarity, but you're asking, okay, but why though? Why did I have to go through losing so many jobs and going through so many relationships and going through a divorce or maybe multiple divorces, miscarriages, betrayals, backstabbings, this, that, and the third, poverty, sickness, whatever. That was you paying off the debt spiritually that your ancestors never paid off, that they should have paid off, to be perfectly honest, chosen one, okay? But the good news is that you've paid a lot of it off. Some of you, all of it. Some of you only have a little more to go, but the Lord's going to grace you to do so because of the fact that you chose the right path and you've put in so much work already. The Lord is saying for a lot of people that we've already went through the bulk of it, like the worst of it has passed, okay? Some people are out from under it as I speak. Others are going to be out from under it in the next few months, and others are just wrapping up, decades of it in this next year or two. So we've already surpassed the big bulk of it, okay? Now, the reason why this word is timeless is because there's some people that haven't done this yet. They're not even aware of what I'm talking about. And these are the wicked ones. This is why I started this message saying this message is for righteous and wicked alike. So the wicked ones that tune in, that are hearing me, when you've been sitting there judging the chosen ones and going, oh, they must be cursed, they must be bad, they must be evil because they went through this and this and this, and why did this happen to them? And if they're such a good person and they're so chosen and they're so blessed and the Lord loves them, then why did this happen and this happen? This is why. Okay, this is why the Lord sent me to make this word, because I'm answering the righteous's question and the wicked's question, because the Lord started out this message by telling me that there's righteous chosen ones that are wondering why they had to go through this, but then simultaneously at the same time there's wicked ones that are wondering why chosen ones went through this as well. They're wondering the very same thing, and the Lord is saying that this is why, is because chosen ones needed to go through it to pay back their spiritual debt. Like I said, I've already talked about it. The wicked ones, they haven't went through it yet. So there are ones on the planet that either have just started paying back their spiritual debt that is owed from their passed on generations, but there's others that have not started paying this debt back yet, and it's up and coming for them, okay? And I started to talk a little bit about this on my word I put out the other day, talking about the tarot readers. So again, that's a different word, part 2 for that, but I'll touch a little bit onto that with what I'm saying here. Say, for example, these tarot readers. So when these tarot readers start reading tarot, they fall into it. They think they fall into it naturally by blessing and things like this. But in actuality, it's the devil pushing them into it, because the devil's aware of the generational curses that are on that tarot reader's head. Some of these tarot readers become aware of generational curses and all the spiritual stuff as they go, but some of them never become aware of it. And they just look at it as a way to make money and as a way to get by. And they just feel like they're so gifted and blessed and all this. And the truth of the matter is that, as we know, the devil blesses too, right? So that tarot reader had a choice, just like you and me chosen one, to take the right path or the left path. They chose the opposite. We chose the right path. They chose the left path. So while they're walking that left path of tarot reading, the devil bribes them into it and pulls them into it by blessing them with money, subscribers, followers, people, ratings, reviews, attention, things like this, notoriety, and also makes them feel like they're so gifted. Okay, that's all intentional. Because the devil doesn't want us breaking these generational curses. Because if we break our generational curses, me breaking mine, I've set myself free, and I've set my children free, and I've set their children free, right? So the devil doesn't want 3 generations of free people. He wants us all enslaved under this spiritual karmic debt that we owe. My grandparents owed it, my parents owed it, I owe it, he wants my kids to owe it, my grandkids to owe it, etc. Okay? So I chose to not take that path, but some of these wicked ones do take that path. Again, whether you do it knowingly or unknowingly is irrelevant, you're taking the path. So these tarot readers, some of them aren't aware of the generational curses, and some are. Some become aware of it, but they are too, the devil has them too wrapped up with the money and the attention and the feeling they're blessed and gifted and favored and all this other stuff, that they continue to do it, right? They continue to read tarot for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Meanwhile, life just carries on tickety-boo, but they have kids. Well, one day they're going to pass away, as we all do, and then boom. Little did they know, some knew, some didn't, that why they were choosing that lifestyle in the first place was because of generational curses. And even though they thought they were blessed on the planet, which by man's standards they were, because the devil blesses too, they actually weren't blessed, because now that they've passed and they go before the Lord, they're going to receive a double portion of judgment for doing that, for partaking in that lifestyle, and for allowing it to be passed on to their children. And if they're aware that they were under generational curses, the Lord made them aware of that, and they didn't break the cycle, then that's even, and so they intentionally or awareingly passed it to their children, that's a double blow for them as well, okay? Now those children, so there's that, then those children are going to go through struggles, poverties, hardships, whatever it may be, because of the fact that they inherited what had been coming down the plank from grandparents, great-grandparents, parents, and now them, okay? I hope this is making sense. So when these wicked ones see some chosen ones going through blow after blow after blow, they laugh and mock and joke and slander and gossip, but it's really that they don't realize that actually, while it appears by man's eyes that the chosen one is not blessed, and that they are, because they're not going through that stuff, in actuality, the chosen one is actually blessed, and the one that's not is not. So those that choose the right path are blessed, and those that choose the left path are not. But it doesn't appear that way, because on planet Earth, where the devil reigns supreme, it appears that those who go through thing after thing after thing, hardship after hardship, are cursed, and those that have a semi-easy peasy life are blessed, and not necessarily, okay? This is wise, because if you're choosing to take the left path, if your parents were alcoholics and you choose to be an alcoholic too, even though you know your children are witnessing that, the devil is going to bless you for it, because you're not breaking yourself or your bloodline free, okay? He wants us in bondage. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. So your family members, before you were in bondage, you're in bondage, and your children are going to be in bondage. So the devil's basically high-fiving you for that. So by the world standards, he's going to smile upon you and have everyone else smile upon you, so that you can continue living your life of ignorance, so that you remain in bondage, whether you know it or not, in this lifetime, pass away, receive a double portion of judgment from God, go to HE double hockey sticks. Then that buck gets passed down to your children, and now they're the ones that have to make the choice that you ultimately sloughed the buck off. They have to now choose if they're going to take the right path or left path. If they choose the left path, it just continues and continues, and you'll literally have 5, 6, 7, 8 generations all in the pit of hell. All right, and cursed. So even if you look blessed, you have a brand new home, a brand new vehicle, and money in the bank, you can still be cursed, because it's not over what we see surface, it's what's underneath, okay? So a lot of these chosen ones aren't paying back their own karma. They're not paying back their own debt. They're paying back karma and debt from ancestors before them. And so some of these chosen ones can be under a deeper debt than others. This is why you'll see some chosen ones come out from under the bondage and the chains in months, and other ones it takes years, and other ones it takes decades. Why some chosen ones go through 3 or 4 hardships, other chosen ones go through 10 or 20 hardships. This is why, is because it just depends on the amount of spiritual debt that is hanging over that bloodline, that family lineage, okay? No different than how all different ones. Some of us can go and get a brand new car and pay it off that day. Others of us buy a brand new car and it takes us 10 years to pay it off, 5 years to pay it off, 2 years to pay it off. It just depends on how flush we are money-wise, right? Sometimes we're down money-wise and we get financially blessed, and we can come out from under financial debt right away. Other times it's the opposite. We're financially blessed, we go and accrue a bunch of debt, and all of a sudden something happens. We run into bankruptcy, our company closes down, we suffer a physical injury and we can't work for a while. And all of a sudden we're completely encompassed with the financial debt we accrued. You understand? So the exact same thing happens to us spiritually. So I hope this answers some questions for chosen ones, righteous ones, and wicked ones alike, is that wicked ones, if you've chosen the left path, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, awareingly or unawareingly, you are cursed, okay? Even if your lifestyle looks like you're not, you are in the Lord's eyes. And when you pass, you will receive a double portion of judgment accordingly for that. You will also ultimately, whether you're aware of it or not, be passing it down to the next generations. And some of you all know that and you don't care. Others of you do care, but you just don't know that. And this is why the Lord is sending me with this message today, is so that those that may come across it this month or down the line can receive this message, because it's never too late to take the right path. Once upon a time, I used to read tarot cards too. I don't. I chose to leave the left path and go and turn around and take the right path. And I'll admit, since I've done that, I was actually, by the world's eyes, I was more blessed when I was doing the tarot versus when I'm not. I went through more ease and peace in certain ways when I walked the left path than when I walked the right. But what the Lord has affirmed to me is that I am doing the right thing, and that when I pass, which my day will one day come, I'm going to go to the right place, and that my children are going to be blessed. They're not going to have this hanging over them like I had it hanging over me. Because I could have chose to keep the buck going, and it stops with me, right? And the Lord is saying, a lot of chosen ones, this is why you're chosen. Of course, not the only reason, but one of many, is because you're chosen to break this curse, this generational curse, okay? And yes, when you're breaking generational curses, it can look by man's eyes that you are in fact cursed. But in actuality, you're actually blessed. No different than the analogy I gave when you're paying off your financial debt. It can look to an onlooker like you're broke, you're poor, you're on the verge of homelessness. Well, yes, you technically are, because you're paying off debt. But in 5 years, when that debt's paid off, you're scot-free. You don't have that hanging over you anymore, right? But the consequence of it, with the sacrifice, was that you had to go without certain things to cover that debt, right? And to get it free and clear. So again, you have that choice. If you don't want to cut corners, you can accrue more and more debt on your family name, which is just going to affect you, right? And then possibly your passed down loved ones, your next of kin. Or you can pay it off. But if you pay it off, it's going to come at a sacrifice. You're going to have to cut corners to pay it off, right? And so this is, the Lord is saying this is a two-way message, is that not only is this a good warning and revelation in regards to generational curses, lots of insight in this message, but also showing you about debt. Be careful about getting into worldly financial debt, because you never know what could happen. You could have a windfall and be in a good place and have a good job and go and buy yourself some things. But if you don't pay them off outright, what would you do if something happened to you and you suffered some sort of a hardship, which we never see coming? And if you're not breaking these spiritual generational curses, it's more likely than not that this could end up inevitably happening to you. And you don't pay off, or then you fall into a bad position financially, and then you can't pay off this debt. They're going to come and repossess these things, right? And then your credit is ruined and things like this. And so if we're making financial decisions, be careful in the worldly way, whether you're on the right path or the left path. And and also be careful of the decisions you're making spiritually as well, okay? And for those of you on the right path, it can look like toil and struggle, because that's the sacrifice that it requires spiritually to pay back this spiritual debt that's been accrued and accumulated on your family name, all right? But the reward is it won't fall onto you, and it won't fall onto your children. And if you're a true child of God, you won't want it to fall on your children, right? Only the selfish, greedy, wicked ones see it differently, right? And for those of you that are wicked and walking the left path, let this be a warning to you, and also a confirmation and a revelation of what really is happening with chosen ones. Just because you see that it looks like they're going through a lot and you or someone else isn't, doesn't mean that that's them taking that on themselves. Sometimes that's been put upon them, right? And, what they're actually going through is paying off the debt that someone else accumulated, not them themselves. So I'm going to leave it there. And I will be back with another word when the Lord leads me to. If the Lord gives me any other information on this message, I will, of course, deliver it. But I know that this is for somebody, because the Lord told me when I was doing dishes that a righteous one, well, several righteous chosen ones that are walking the right path have asked this question to themselves and to God, and He heard you and He's bringing me with the answer. So I hope this brings you revelation and confirmation. And for also simultaneously, the Lord is saying that this is a dual message, because there's been wicked ones that are asking themselves and the Lord and talking in amongst themselves as to, oh, mocking and ridiculing the chosen ones for the things that they've had to endure for the last few years. And this is to let you know what really was going on and to also give you a warning that your time is coming. The Lord is saying that debts are going to, he's calling in spiritual debts and curses and stuff. He's calling in, those who owe. The Lord's saying the loan sharks. I don't know, but anyways, I know you know what I mean. The Lord is saying he's calling all upon his debt. So those wicked, righteous ones continue on the right path. You're almost all the way through. Wicked ones, your number's almost called, okay? And you're going to see what I'm talking about from firsthand experience. So anyways, I will leave it there. I hope it finds you well. I know it'll find the right ones in its right and perfect timing. Take care and God bless.